Hello, we're going to look at our first week of chemistry for grade 10, and in particular we're going to look at being able to look at diagrams about atoms and being able to work out what's on the periodic table, and I guess also vice versa, being able to draw atom diagrams in sequence. You'll need for this exercise a periodic table in front of you, and for sake of argument we might go and pick a particular element. We might go, for instance, and pick beryllium. So see if you can find beryllium on your periodic table. You'll notice that beryllium is defined by a little box, and in the box is a symbol for beryllium, the name up the top, so there will be a beryllium written there, and underneath will be the symbol for beryllium, which is Be. There's a number on top, which is what we call the atomic number, or the Z, and a number on the bottom, which is usually a horrible looking number. It starts off with 9.012. So for this year, for rounding purposes, where we see a number like that, we'll basically go and replace it with just the nearest whole number. Nearest whole number is 9. So this tells us that beryllium is the fourth element in the periodic table, and it tells us how the atom is organised for beryllium. So let's look at an example of the beryllium atom. In the middle of every atom is a nucleus, and in the nucleus are big subatomic particles, what we call protons and neutrons. So the first thing we're going to draw for the beryllium atom are the protons and the neutrons. So we'll need to come up with some symbols, so I might just write down these symbols before that we're going to use so we're really clear. Protons are particles that we say have a positive charge. That means they're electrically charged. They will interact electrically with other parts of the atoms, most commonly to try and push atoms apart, which is why we feel solid, even though atoms are mainly empty space. So a proton will have a positive charge. The opposite of the proton are electrons. Electrons have a negative charge. And then we have the other particle, which is the neutron. Both the protons and the neutrons are very heavy, and they're in the nucleus. The electrons are around the outside, and they aren't heavy, but they're charged, but they're not heavy. So if I was sketching out this atom, just see if I can create myself a bit more room along here, pop that over here. If I was sketching out this atom, just draw myself a little bit of room where I can decide to sketch things out, so I'll just go and do that. Just give myself a little bit of a drawing space so it's clear where I'm actually drawing and where the outside is. If I was sketching out this atom, what I would basically do is I would start putting in my protons. So I'd put in 4 protons, so off I go using the correct symbol for the proton, and put my four protons in the middle. Now there's another 5 things that are heavy to make up the 9, and those 5 things are the neutrons. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we might just put a little circle around it to show this is all inside the nucleus. Now on the outside I'm going to have 4 electrons, because there's always the same number of protons as electrons in a neutral atom. So 1, 2, it turns out there's 2 electrons close to the atom in what we call the first shell. You aren't necessarily expected to be too worried about shells if you're looking at the emerging and foundation levels, but you do need to be able to count up the total number. So the first 2 are in a shell that's close by, which I'll just go and pop over here as a little dotted line to show they're in a shell. In reality, the nucleus is much tinier and further away, and then the last two electrons are in their own other shell, and there's actually space for another 6 more if you wanted to put them there. And they're in their shell. And that's the diagram of the beryllium atom. Now we need to be able to draw diagrams in sequence. So we need to be able to realise that there are 4 protons. So there's a 4 there, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4 in protons. We need to realise that all up there are 9 heavy things. If there are 4 protons, that means the remaining heavy things are called neutrons. They don't have a charge, but they're still got a bit of mass to them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of neutrons, they're all in the nucleus, and then on the outside there are 4 electrons buzzing around. We kind of think of them as like going in orbits, but in reality they kind of buzz around everywhere, but are mainly within a certain region. Happy with that idea? I hope you are. We're going to basically go both the other way now, where I'm going to draw you a diagram and you're going to have to start to actually recognise what the element is. So I'm now going to sketch a diagram for you and you're going to recognise what the element is. Okay. Using the same symbols as before, let me draw this diagram in. Here's my little diagram. See if I can fix it up a little bit better. It's meant to be a big plus sign there. I've done a bit of a bad job there, but it is meant to be a plus sign there. Okay. That's the inside bit. Can you remember what we call the inside bit? What name we give to it? It starts with N. It's called the nucleus. This is the nucleus. I'll write that down. Around the outside we've got a couple of these things. Just change my colour again. One thing there. One thing there. And they're going around in an orbit. And we've also got as well a third one floating around here, going in its own little orbit all the way around. Can you work out what element it is? Have a little think, and if you think you know, puzzle it out, press pause, and then you can go and check in a minute. Okay, remembering that funny looking one that I didn't scrub out very well was a proton. To work out what an atom is, all I need to do is to count up the number of protons. You can see easily I've got, and I'll just put a little mark as I count them up, I've got a proton there, a proton there, and a proton there. So all up I've got 3 protons, so I then go back to my periodic table. What's the element with 3 protons in it? The element with 3 protons in it is lithium. So I can then say that the element must be lithium. I can do a double check because there are 3 electrons as well, which balances the number of protons. So that's fairly easy. So by looking at a diagram and by counting up the number of protons, I can actually go and work out what element it is quite easily. The other side of things, if we go back to what we were doing before when we were looking at the symbol, that other side of things is harder. If I pick a different one and I'm going in this process, I'm picking fluorine, and fluorine's got a 9 up the top. It's also got down the bottom an 18.998, which I'm going to say is very, very close to 19, and change it to a 19. We can see here that when we sketch the diagram, we've got to start off with 9 protons. That means around the outside there'll be 9 electrons. Again, you don't have to, if you're looking at the emerging or foundation levels, worry about exactly how those electrons are placed. Other people will do that bit as well. And then finally we have the neutrons. We know the heavy bit of the atom weighs 19. If there's 9 protons, that means there's got to be 10 neutrons. So you could then draw similarly to I've done a diagram. So that's the basic idea of what you will need to do. If you're feeling comfortable with it, we can now go through and actually do the task together for grade 10.